Alright, so today we are starting to frame our deck. Our footings are all cured, and we're going to start by putting a ledger up on the house to justify elevation. So we've done that, and now we're running the beams perpendicular to the house. So another reason why we wanted to put a ledger on the house was to justify the end of the beam, of one of the heights of the beam. And now we're going to start creating elevation for each of our beams. There's 5 total, and then we'll start hanging joists on, or putting joists on top of the beams once we get that buttoned up. I can come up a little bit. Hand me that. Hand me that.
What are you trying to do right now?
I'm justifying elevation of the beam location, or of the footing location to support the beam. The beam has a slight hump in it, so I'm just raising this up a little bit so that it levels out the beam when we put the fasteners in it. So we poured with a laser, we poured these footings with a Stabila laser, and I was able to get them within a certain tolerance. So we use composite shims for some of our footings when we don't have more than an inch to bring them up, and then it keeps it from ever having a problem with rotting or decay. Okay, so what you see here is all of our 2x8 joists, all pressure treated, and they're going on top of the beams that we're setting right now. And what we've done is we've set them to grade. So what we did is we took a level and we've graded them to thickness, from the thickest board to the thinnest board, so that as we lay these out, the decking isn't doing as much of this. Like, we call it a roller. We call it a roller coaster effect. So grading your joists, grading your joists takes a couple minutes, but it's necessary.
What is it you're doing now?
Justifying the height of the beam to the joist on the house, because this is set to height. So now if I set this height, then we'll know how much we need to shim up between here and the beam under our footings. But I got to get this side figured out with a string so we know how high to make the beam.
Is that what the screws were for?
Yes, that's what the screws are for.
How are you going to get this beam into that? What is this called? The metal thing?
We're gonna put a post in right here.
Okay.
Because it's too high for Phil. Is that a piece 7 inches long? Is that a 6 inch? Yeah. 4x6?
You want a 4x6?
These are the septic tank lids for the sewer for the house. So we building over them, and we're gonna have access to them through the top of the deck. But I got to make sure that they can get to them. So this beam is a little bit in a precarious location. He only has to get to this lid once every 5 years, and it's okay to have stuff over it as long as they can scoot the lid out. So once we get this to elevation, then we'll be able to determine if the lid comes off or not. And that's kind of what I'm doing right now, is kind of getting things ready to check it, because I got to make sure we can get this thing out of here. Which looks like most of the stuff's been removed at one point. We might have to do a little digging and make sure that this thing can come off. So that's what I'm kind of doing right now while Phil's getting the post ready. A little low. So that's 5 and 5/8.
Yeah, I had 5 and 7/8.
5 and 7/8 is probably too high. So 5 3/4 is probably the money. Yeah.
Trying to get the thing down.
A little bit. I had it moving earlier. Well, it's pretty darn.
Is there a shim under there?
Not yet. Close enough, I think. It's almost like I should have you put the screws in and then shim it.
Alright, if you're on the rope, it's not gonna be a problem.
We needed somebody heavy. Andy's not here today, so I had to get up on this beam to try and drop it a little bit because it had a little bit of a hump. So I'm getting Phil to set it to elevation, and then I'm gonna shim it after he's done putting in the screws. Because see, that's what you want when you're setting elevation to your beam. If this was like this, if I was pulling this and it was doing that, that's bad. But if you got a little vibration in the string, that's good. So we got 3 of our 5 beams are set. Now we're gonna justify elevation for the other side of the deck, and we're steamrolling right along. So good progress. We've got a couple small beams to put in along here. We're doing an octagon front to this deck, so those will go in after we get our main beam set to elevation. I start getting some layouts done, and Phil will start doing like tacking joists together and things, and then I'll start figuring out where these go. But we got to get our finish getting our beams to elevation first. So you always grade your framing. Whenever you're getting ready to put in a beam or a joist, we always cup it up, bow it up. Okay, my way 1.5 inches. Whoa, too far. Whoa, right there. So we've almost got all of our beams to elevation now, so we're just finishing cutting some blocks to add for underneath the areas that we don't have any support for the footings to the beams. And I always use Q-Tech Extreme sealer, well, it's like a stain, and it penetrates deeper into most hardwoods and softwoods than any other sealer will. And we also use these Perdura brushes to apply the stain with. Both great products. Check them out. Give them a look on Instagram. I don't know if they have a YouTube channel or not, but so yeah, we'll get the rest of these set, and then we'll start putting our joists up. We have all of our beams set to elevation. So now I have to do some layout on top of the beam so we know where to put all of our joists, and then we'll start rolling joists and start giving this deck some shape. So what you see here is a thing called flashing. Flashing is very important on a deck. What it does is it keeps the moisture and the water from going behind the ledger and rotting out the side of the wall. We always put waterproof membrane tape behind our rim joist, but this keeps moisture from going behind the rim joist and getting this wet to begin with. This flashing is 3 inches tall, so we're up the wall this high, so no water can wick back up and get behind the flashing and do the same thing. And we had to repair some rot on this, and you can see the homeowner is going to get new siding, but you can see how the siding is just being eaten away by moisture over the years. It's just kind of soft and pudgy and stuff. So this is all getting replaced, so I'm not too concerned. But what we do is we put the ledger 1 1/8 inch down. Our deck boards are 1/8 inch thick. They'll fit right in here, and they're going to run this way from the house out. So this is a really crucial part of any deck install, is adding flashing up against the house. Sometimes having a good construction calculator on your phone is a must. I use one called Construction Master Pro. It was like 25 bucks, which is kind of expensive app for your phone, but it's more than saved me $25 in frustration doing layouts. I mostly use this strictly for figuring out joists. So I have 144 inches. Where's inch? There it is. 144 inches, and I need to figure out how many or what my centers are going to be if I want to run 14 inches on center. So I'm just going to divide it. Well, I need to know how many spaces I have first. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. I'm going to have 9 spaces. So I'm going to divide that 144 by 9, and that gives me 16 inches on center, which is great. But if I divide it by 10, equals 14.4. Okay, if I want to convert that to imperial, then I would say 144 inches divided by 10 spaces equals 14 3/8. So it gives me my layout for my joist on center, which is kind of cool, 14 3/8. Now if I add 14 3/8 plus 14 inch and 3/8, it's 28 3/4. That's my next mark. Now I can just keep hitting equals, and it tells me my layout of where I need to put my joists. It's worth $25, right? We are chalking lines for our joists. So now I'm going through and I'm marking out all my chalk lines with a square and putting an X on the side where I want the joist to go on the side of the line. And that's just because sometimes your chalk line will get erased and then you're like wondering where your joists go. So we always go through and use a square and square everything off. Now we know we have nice straight lines. Everything's going to be laid out properly and they won't get erased. Our beams are set to elevation, and all of our layouts done. So now Phil's starting to put the joists in place. We got to add a seam board down the center of the deck, and then we'll butt all the joists into that seam board, and then they'll break, and they'll move 16 feet from each side of the center beam. And then once we get that done, we'll tack everything in place. And then Phil will start pressure blocking, and I'll start figuring out some of the ends of the decks. I'm getting ready to cut some beams, but my saw was a little out of square. So I'm trying to get a nice equal cut. But this plate isn't 1000% square. That looks pretty good. So I wanted to square it up before I start trying to cut these beams. I like this saw for cutting beams because you can do it in one pass instead of 2 passes where you have to flip the saw around. So that's what we're doing right now, cutting some beams back. So I have a beam going like this that we need to put in, and then a beam going like this that we have to put in. So those get tied in to these footings plus 2 of the existing beams, and that's what's going to create our octagon front. So what we're doing now is we're putting a seam board on top of our beam. All of our joists are going to butt into the seam board, and that's going to hold the center all together. A lot of guys overlap the joists like this and screw them together, but then that puts an offset screw pattern in the deck, and even though we're using hidden clips, it drives me bonkers if stuff isn't exactly straight. So I don't do that. I always put a clean seam, so all my joist clips, screws, Cortex, stainless, whatever you're putting in the line is in a straight line, not in an offset line. So it doesn't go like this, it goes like this. This will be 45 degrees to this beam. And that's what I use this fold out square for, is it comes in real handy for squaring up the deck to the house, and it does a really great job of squaring up for making 45 degree angles. It's a pretty common measurement in what we do. So it folds up and unfolds and turns into a pretty nice square. And it allows us to get pretty nice, accurate measurements so we can figure out lengths of beams and things like that.
How's this process going?
It's a little more time consuming because you're trying to come up with different angles for things, and it's an auxiliary beam, so like these joists that come across will catch it and they're going to cantilever past, and then I'll cut all this off to create the octagon corner of this deck. For now I'm just trying to justify elevation, but this beam right here is out of whack. It's like leaning this way. So I'm trying to bring it back into play, so when I screw this all together, it's nice and flat. Or else it's going to knock this beam out of level too. So trying to figure out what we did here and why it went a little goofy on us. You can bang your end over at the house, right?
I don't know if it's going to go up anymore.
Not up, just...
Well, if it needs to go that way.
It needs to go like this.
Yeah, it's going to go this way.
Yeah.
It's going to go up.
I don't know, let's try it and see. I think, here. Go ahead and bust off the 3 screws in the middle too. So I think it's just the whole beam is maybe out of whack a little bit. We can fix it now, but we can't fix it later. I bet you I got over half of what I needed just by doing that.
Yeah, we're money.
Your money now?
You got it?
I got it. So onward and upward now. I'm just getting this corner beam set so that I can cut the rest of this off. I got one more to set over here, and then I've got this kind of octagonal set of beams going on, which will look nice for the outside of this deck. All right, so we're getting there. Tomorrow we'll finish up our framing. We'll probably start framing up for our stairs and do all of our blocking for our railing and any other additional blocking for support that we need. We'll also do some mid-span pressure blocking, which I'll recap after that. Once again, thank you for watching. I really appreciate it. If you like what you saw, click the subscribe button to continue to watch more of our videos. And if you want to be notified of when we're putting out new content, also click the bell icon. Thank you very much and have a great day.